Now, joining us in a second will be Casey O'Riordan, News Talk reporter on the latest on the murder. Firstly, great play last night in the Theatre Royal with the young people involved. From a wonderful, proud granny, well done to all involved. We've a lot coming up in the programme today. We're going to have a look back on the week that was in politics. We're going to be looking at a Showcase Creative Expo. We're going to be looking at sports. We're going to be looking at very important changes, potentially, for the nursing home industry in Ireland. And we will be dealing with the murder investigation as it unfolds. Casey, good morning.
Good morning, how are you? Good,
thank you. Casey O'Riordan, News Talk reporter. You have been following the story, the gruesome murder of Keane Mulready-Woods. The papers are full of it this morning. It's just one of those stories, Casey, that has really, I think, like sometimes we talk about being immune to murders and you hear it and you just say, right, another murder, but this has just really got people talking and thinking about the levels of depravity that some people can go to.
Absolutely. And I think what struck me the most is, I lived in Drogheda for 4 years up until recently, and it was somewhere I was always very happy to walk around and felt very safe. But I spent the day there yesterday and I felt my personal safety. I was nervous. I definitely was nervous. And from speaking to friends of mine and former colleagues, that was echoed. And the people of Drogheda really are afraid from speaking to locals and vox popping them. And, so much so that they're now organising a rally. That's kind of, I suppose, the big thing, talk of the town at the moment is the mayor and deputy mayor of Drogheda are organising a rally for the citizens to come out and show that they're not going to continue to stand idly by. The people of Drogheda are mad. They're mad that these thugs are giving the town a name that's synonymous with drugs. They're planning this rally. It's going to be Saturday week, so not tomorrow, but the following Saturday. They're going to march the streets of the town to show these gangs that they're not tolerated and they're not welcome. They did have one last year, a similar kind of rally, and it was well attended, but many people spoke about being afraid to join that for fear that the gang members would be monitoring it. But I think with this latest development, the murder of Keane Mulready-Woods, we could see a very good turnout at that rally.
I think we will, particularly in the light that the political parties are focusing on crime and drugs today in their political statements, I suppose, in terms of the election. On a purely, I suppose, personal basis, we have the family, we have the funeral arrangements, we have the torso still not being found, we have this idea that his nails were taken off, we have that pure depravity of a 17-year-old as well. Only a child, effectively.
And indeed, like the Taoiseach and Justice Minister, they are going to visit Drogheda today, and they have a meeting scheduled with the Chief Superintendent, Christy Mangan, who's leading the investigation from Drogheda Garda Station. They're going to be meeting at sometime around 11. They'll want to know what's the latest, and I suppose hopefully they'll make sure that Gardaí there have everything they need to police the matter. But certainly, as you mentioned, the election, this will dominate, I think, the agenda over the next coming weeks. But also today, it's particularly poignant.
It really is. And then you have the other aspect of a town or an area. Limerick had it for a few years, and you get an upsurge in gang violence and a turf war. We'll be talking to Michael Toole from the Star in a few minutes. This idea that there's a turf war going on. You've got two gangs vying for control of the lucrative drugs market, and that market is massive. So we hear about people, Rory Cowan tweeting last night, he's been on this programme before Christmas, that anybody goes out this weekend and takes cocaine, they are part of this problem as well. Isn't that it, Karen? Casey?
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. People that think, they can head out at the weekend and have, an innocent, dabble in drugs, and go to work on Monday morning and they're a functioning member of society. That's all well and good, but really you are lining the pockets of drug dealers that are responsible for the murder of this 17-year-old boy.
That's it. Listen, we'll let you go because I know you have to report on this. Casey O'Riordan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Casey O'Riordan there from News Talk, talking about drugs, and there's nothing innocent about taking drugs at weekends or any other time. So if you shouldn't be doing it. Firstly, that's the first thing, and secondly, if you are doing it, it has to come from somewhere. It has to come from some drug dealer. It has to come from some drug lord. And Keane Mulready-Woods, reading the papers this morning and looking into this, he was just a runner, as they call it. I'm going to talk now to Michael O'Toole in the Star, as a lot in the papers this morning, and there's now talks of this escalating. and a massive amount of money for information between the drugs gangs in terms of following this through. Michael O'Toole, good morning. I don't think the line is great. Michael O'Toole, good morning.
Morning, Damien.
Michael, looking at your reports today, and you have the story that there's a hit of €250,000 out, a bounty, regarding this horrific case.
This murder of Keane Mulready-Woods has the capacity to become a major problem for our society because of the people who are involved in it. On the micro level, it's about a young boy who unfortunately had become involved in criminality himself in one of the two Drogheda feuds and was sucked into it and had become active with one gang. And it's about the investigation into his murder. With every action, there's always a reaction, and there are serious consequences to this murder because of the people who are higher up the food chain than young Keane was. Essentially, this is a war between two serious criminals. One is based in Drogheda, and one is based in the Coolock area of North Dublin. He's known as Mr. Big. Very, very dangerous man, an armed robber, involved in tiger kidnappings, and involved in drug importation as well as drug dealing. He is facing off against another criminal from the Drogheda area. Unfortunately, one of the key people on the Drogheda side is the man who is suspected of killing Keane Mulready, and he has been going after this man, who we call Mr. Big, in the paper today. For several years, there have been various shootings, various attacks, and that sort of thing. So it's a case of kill or be killed. So Mr. Big realised that the other man wants to kill him, and the other man realised that Mr. Big wants to kill him. But the question is who's going to be murdered first. And Mr. Big has the muscle and the capacity to offer €250,000 for that other man to be killed. But the next few days will be very, very interesting.
And it really has that capacity to explode, as you say, because of the depravity as well involved with this. Like, they took off his fingernails.
I've covered plenty of cases where people have been dismembered. You can think of people, but all those times it has been, the bodies have been dismembered for one reason, that's to hide the evidence. People panic. We've had cases where people have been put in suitcases and put in the Grand Canal in central Dublin beside Crook Park. So it's very much the expediency and the natural exigency about, right, I need to get rid of this body. There's a man called Christopher Gaffney. Something similar happened to him in Cruddy on the Dublin-Meath border about a decade ago, his various body parts. This is the first time that I can remember, definitely in Britain. There was one similar case late last year in Holland, is where body parts were cut up specifically to taunt rival gangs. And this has happened here. And I've never experienced anything like it. And it is a new departure.
Yeah.
And as you say, fingernails, all that level of torture, it's absolutely perfect.
Okay, we seem to have lost the line there with Michael. Sorry about that, Michael. We will come back to you. We'll come back to Michael again, probably not later in the programme, but we'll see what happens over the weekend regarding this. Anybody, any comments on this? Please text in 083 333 975, text or WhatsApp. You can also call Audrey on 051 846 123. You can comment on Facebook, on Twitter, and in light of some of the discussions we've been having this week as well, and people stepping down from politics and going forward in politics, again, if anybody's commenting on things that has been put up through WR, through myself, in terms of Facebook posts, there's some keyboard warriors out there. Will you please just think of other people? Really, think of their families, think of people that have done work, and you can make comments, but you don't have to be personally abusive. Really, really annoys me. And it ends up that you have to take down your original post because of comments that go up. It's not on, everybody's entitled to discuss their points, to put their word out there, but personal and abusive comments, just really, you're shooting the man, the woman, whatever it is, rather than the actual message itself or what they've done. And everybody's entitled to their opinion. I'm not saying that that's what, and that is the life and breath of Facebook. It's also the life and breath of this programme, and we do reflect that in the comments we read out. For example, I mentioned earlier on Ollie and Mary's show about protests in Dublin and the farmers. Any comments on the farmers and the protests that happened yesterday, let us know. Suggested there was suggestions last year the 24/7 cardiac care would do some kind of a go slow protest in Dublin. Robert texted in to say the last time we had a march on the 24/7 cardiac care, we were diverted from the main streets in Dublin down to the quiet streets. Therefore, we had no impact whatsoever. That's from Robert. A text in, can you ask your guest who is against Mr. Big over the turf war? He mentions a name. I can't read out that name, of course, because that would be libelous. Other people have texted in that the mayor of Drogheda has been assaulted in terms of trying to do this and trying to sort these things out, and also that children are being roped into being runners for drug gangs. But everyone who takes legal drugs and drugs from drug dealers in Waterford, Limerick, Cork, anywhere in Dublin is adding to the problem. Mags has texted in to say, imagine the poor family, the parents of that family, the young boy. How could they cope between the continuous mention of dismembered bodies and photographs that went up on social media? Again, these pictures have not been clarified that they are of this particular incident, but they were of an awful incident. Another texter, you need a specialist Garda unit who won't be compromised, who won't be frightened to trample down on criminal gangs. Gardaí have too much to worry about living in the same town. That's from Councillor John Hearn. Keep your texts and your comments coming in if you have any interest in nursing homes, if you are in a nursing home, or if you have a loved one in a nursing home. You don't want to miss this next item. Welcome back to the programme. Ty Daly will be joining us in a second. Firstly, some of your texts and comments. 083 3333 975. Text or WhatsApp. Damien, they know drug dealers, so lift them. Don't mind what anybody say. Put them away for good. Well, you have to have proof, you have to have evidence. We have a rule of law here, but certainly the texts that are coming in are saying that the idea of a separate Garda unit, specialist unit. Now, I know there are detectives that go around the country and they work into special units as well, which does help. Damien, says Joe Kelly, I support the farmers' protest, but they're treated differently by the Gardaí. Our 24/7 marches regarding cardiac care were diverted away from Kiltare Street and onto side streets. This lessens the impact. A life and death matter, and we are ignored. Councillor Joe Kelly. Let us know what you think, please. Text, ring or WhatsApp. Tig, good morning.
Morning, Damien.
Thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome, indeed. Thanks for the opportunity.
Not at all. Chief Executive of the Nursing Homes of Ireland fears that nursing homes could close because of insurance matters. Tell us, what's this all about?
Well, I suppose it's important in the first instance there's no immediate threat because, you and your listeners would know the role the nursing home sector plays right across Waterford City and County. So I think it's important that, we don't want to create any alarm. But I suppose in essence what this is about is that you and your listeners will be well aware of the crisis in the insurance across many sectors of business and indeed society, charities and indeed groups across the country over the last while. The nursing home sector has been raising this issue. We're members of the Alliance for Insurance Reform, and many of our members have seen double-digit increases in insurance premiums over the last couple of years. But we became aware earlier this week that one of the key underwriters have now decided to exit the business entirely. So what this does is it will restrict competition, and our fear is that it will lead to even further increases in premium.
Yeah, so this is Liberty Insurance, one of the main nursing home insurers. It's exiting the commercial liability and commercial property lines of its business. Why is it saying it's doing this, Tig?
Well, I don't speak for Liberty, obviously, but what they're saying is that they're concentrating on private lines and motor and getting out of the commercial insurance in its entirety. I suppose, again, we live in a litigious society, and we know from working with the Alliance for Insurance Reform, for example, and indeed media reports that, the payouts on insurance are quite significant. Now, I'm not here to defend the insurance company, I can assure you, but I think we have got to look at the whole area of insurance reform. From a nursing home's point of view, as I say, nursing homes have a key role to play. We suffer, if you like, from the fact that we're not paid the same as the HSE. The NTPF are a monopoly purchaser, so there's only a certain amount of funding available for nursing home care, and if the costs keep rising, then that is going to put a further threat to sustainability of the sector.
Where does it leave the sector at present, Tig, in terms of other providers?
Well, there were three underwriters, so
yeah.
We're now down to two. And from speaking with brokers, they are saying that they will obviously be in the market trying to encourage or entice maybe another underwriter into the market, but there's no guarantee of that. So I suppose, what it does, and our concern is that it does potentially restrict competition. And the point we're making is that you'll recall in December when the whole area of creches and childcare facilities became very much into the public domain, the government at the time intervened in that case. Now, there are exact parallels there between the childcare sector and the nursing home sector, given that the majority of funding comes through the state. So there is a responsibility on the state to step up here and increase the fair deal funding so that nursing homes aren't further squeezed, if you like, as a result of insurance premium rising.
Yeah. How many people are in nursing homes at present, Tig, around the country, do you know?
Well, across the country there's just shy of about 30,000 people.
30,000?
About 30,000, yeah. About 5,000 of those would be in what we termed as public or HSE nursing homes, and about 25,000 in the private and voluntary sector. So it's a key part of a well-functioning health service.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll be very familiar with the crisis in the University Hospital over Christmas and indeed in the last number of weeks. I mean, if we didn't have a well-functioning nursing home service, even more and more people would be delayed discharge in our hospitals. So it is a vital sector. We are living longer, and that's to be celebrated. Sometimes you hear that in the negative. We should be celebrating that fact, but we need to plan for that, and that's why I suppose the vitality and viability of both existing and current provision and indeed future provision is critically important, because you'll hear all the politicians over the next couple of weeks talking about Slán to care and the
promises,
the changes that we're making absolutely in health service. I mean, what we need care in the community, and nursing homes are a vital part of that care in the community continuum. Yeah,
we just had the situation, we covered it on the programme here earlier in the week, last week, about a new nursing home open in Dungarvan, and the HSE stroke the Waterford Hospital Management block booking all the beds for the next 8 to 10 weeks. It's going to cost around €300,000.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's important that your listeners would be aware, and I've spoken with you and some of your colleagues on the station before. I mean, the average cost of care in terms of what the state is willing to pay the private sector is on average 66% more in the public system. So the HSE, as administrators of the Fair Deal scheme, are paying themselves in many cases double what they're expecting the private sector to provide it for. So, there is discrimination there within the nursing home sector. There is a review of Fair Deal ongoing, which was promised in 2017, if you don't mind. So
3 years ago now.
There has to be reform of the Fair Deal to ensure that we can, as I say, maintain and sustain a vibrant nursing home sector.
Like I know
in many parts of rural Ireland. I mean, you talk about Dungarvan, the nursing homes there would be large employers.
Yeah, they are.
So
yeah,
it's a very important, valuable part of the health service, but also it's an economic dynamo in many parts of rural Ireland, right across the city and county of Waterford.
And nobody's denying that. And are you saying then that the HSE are, in terms of their, I suppose, bang for buck, in terms of the amount of money that they spend per bed, that they're wasting money? Is it something that's built into the system? Is it just inefficiencies, or is there something worse going on?
Well, I think it's a combination of, there's inefficiency there, and the squeeze on the private sector will have long-term consequences. If they continue to squeeze the fee and don't pay what we would regard as an appropriate cost of care, then what it will do, it would even have bigger impact than what we're talking about this morning in terms of insurance. So, I mean, there is acknowledgement there. Yeah. The Public Accounts Committee have discussed this issue. The Comptroller and Auditor General is doing a review into the scheme. So there is wide acknowledgement there of the variations, if you like, in terms of what it costs the state to provide the care itself. And we're not saying that the state haven't a role to play. They absolutely have. But the private and voluntary sector are the majority provider. Our members have invested heavily to provide care. As I said, they're large employers in communities, and they need to be supported in ensuring that they can continue to provide that high-quality care in communities across Ireland.
Tig, thanks for joining us this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity. Good morning, Damien.
Thank you. Tig Daly there, Chief Executive of Nursing Homes Ireland, on the fears for nursing homes regarding insurance. Tom from the city has texted in, Liberty may be getting out because of Public Accounts Committees, Piers Doherty, Michael Darcy, others have texted in as well, opening a can of worms on the insurance industry. More might follow, says Tom. You could be right, Tom. That could well be the case. We just don't know what the situation is. There's obviously major issues happening with the insurance industry at present. We've heard about greenway businesses. We've heard about retail businesses. There's more in the papers today about it and online. So let us know what you think about that, please. 083 333 975. A text in regarding abuse on social media. Damien, I'm absolutely disgusted with those keyboard warriors and those that have nasty, hurtful comments. I wonder, would they say those awful words to people's faces? A very good point. A very, very good point. There are so many people that it seems grand. You can sit back on your phone, on your computer, your PC, whatever, and send this message out. Would you actually say it to somebody's face? Again, some people that know better and better life experience than me would say, if you can't say anything nice, say nothing. Or if you're going to say something, say it to somebody's face. It's better off. Next, we are going to have the very, very latest on politics, on the political discourse that has formed the week that was, both nationally and locally. Now we are going to have a discussion on the week that was in terms of politics. We had a political panel last Friday. We're following it up. The A-team are here, and Liz unfortunately couldn't make it today. She's on the A-team as well. She's still unwell. Want to wish Liz Reddy the very best. She's been sick for the week. Kieran Foley, Munster Express, thanks very much for joining us.
No problem.
Still no word on the Munster. No, you don't reveal anything.
No.
Mary Francis, News and Star, thanks for joining us.
Hi.
Johnny O'Connor, Munster Express, RTE, and every other publication that you want to think of. Fair play to you. How are you getting on?
I'm well, thank you.
Good. Nothing to reveal either?
No, I'll make something up if you like.
Dermot, good morning.
Good morning, David.
Dermot Keys, formerly of Munster Express, now of
Yes.
News and Star. And
I don't know anything either.
You don't know, man. Say nothing. And
In general, anyway.
Say nothing and
Yeah.
keep saying it. That's what we're saying, yeah. Listen, we had a good discussion last week, and things have changed, obviously, in the last week. There's been a lot of things happening regarding the election. And the first thing is we're going to play a little clip. The election was actually called by a certain Leo Varadkar.
I've always said that the election should happen at the best time for the country. Now is that time.
Now is that time. I don't think now is that time, because he didn't want to call it in February. He was only saying the week beforehand he wanted to stay until May.
I think that was just posturing, really.
Is posturing another way of saying you're changing your tune?
Well, I think it would have been very, very difficult to keep going.
I know.
Until, so they were all.
But if he'd come out and said, we didn't want an election in February, Fianna Fáil are forcing us to do this, and basically, ultimately it was a vote of no confidence to Simon Harris. They were being told that you weren't going to get this, and John McGuinness in Kilkenny was again throwing the baby out of the bathwater, getting into and getting excited, and he was going to say, no, I'm not going to vote for this.
It's a shock that John McGuinness got excited, isn't it? Really, I was stunned by that. Real turn of events for him.
I know what you mean, Johnny.
I still think it is.
He made it sound like this is the time for it, yes.
Yeah, well, he was talking about Brexit, he was talking about the Northern Assembly, things like that. But in Waterford, the big change from last week is the fact that John Halligan has now said that he's definitely not going.
Yes.
And that means there's a genuine vacancy. I mean, John Deise wasn't going, but of course Fine Gael are looking to retain the seat. But now there's a genuine vacancy, and that's good news it's good news for all the candidates, but probably it'll be an encouragement to independents, especially those in and near Waterford. John had over 8,000 first preference votes the last time, and they have to go somewhere.
They do, yeah. Mary, we'll talk about the local stuff in a minute. In terms of the national picture, is there any issues that have come up already? For example, we've had Leo getting into a forklift the day that a homeless person had died, and Owen Murphy's poster, he did take it down near there. Is there anything that's come up already that has already sort of, I suppose, formed this campaign, do you think?
I think there's been some elements of unfortunate timing with Leo Varadkar and the homeless person, which was an awful thing to happen. Whether that'll actually impact on people's voting, I don't know. I think they will see that these are just timing things. But Councillor Paddy Holohan for Sinn Féin,
what he said yesterday about Leo,
yeah.
About
I think that's put. I think he's been asked by Sinn Féin to not run now. Is that my?
Well, he's certainly been asked for an apology. He did issue an apology. He said his comments were misrepresented. It was a podcast that he said. It was comments about Leo Varadkar, and they seem to have said, right, it's over and done with, and Leo said he's accepted the apology.
Yeah, the outcry on social media is interesting because it really shows that type of behaviour and that type of commentary by Councillor Paddy Holohan has no place anymore.
Kieran, is social media a barometer of where we're at? Because we talk about maybe only 15-20% of listeners to any radio show will text in. Social media also has a very specific... So do we place too much emphasis maybe on people's comments?
I think absolutely we do. And I mean, past elections, especially abroad, have showed us that. If you look at in the UK, I mean, I think it was the 2015 election, David Cameron, the Conservatives, they weren't expected to do well. They performed very strongly, were able to go on, won the election. If you look at the US, what happened with Trump in 2016, we were hearing a lot from all the celebrities tweeting, anti-Trump messages, but he was obviously connecting with the ordinary voter. And I do think that would be at our peril if we were to place too much emphasis on what has been said on Facebook, on Twitter.
But Mary's point is good in the sense that there was an outcry against what was said.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it has a part to play in terms of that in terms of maybe highlighting aspects of the campaign that may otherwise have gone unnoticed. But in terms of judging it and using it as a barometer for how the election is going to play out, I think we shouldn't place too much emphasis on that.
I think Mary Frances is right that I don't think the public will actually turn against Leo because of that poor man and the posters and the fact that he was in. Stuff happens, and I think people understand that. But I don't think the campaign hasn't settled down yet, and the big issue still hasn't been decided. But to me, it's looking like homelessness is going to eclipse everything. Because, I think the reason I say that is that I think deep down the public, they suspect that the health is almost ungovernable, but the government can certainly change housing.
OK, one of the men who is fighting that Leo, I suppose, image head on is Micheál Martin. This was him at his campaign launch.
We need a new government that will focus on real progress in health, affordable housing, the climate change crisis.
Climate change crisis. Dermot Keys, do we see this, like the posters started going up this week of Fine Gael, right? Leo, that's all it was, just Fine Gael and a picture of Leo. They're playing on this personality that Leo is going to get Fine Gael over the line on this.
Well, it's a very presidential approach, and I don't think it's going to work.
Very good point. You don't think it's going to work?
No, I think... My own feeling about Leo Varadkar is obviously a capable politician. You don't become Taoiseach by winning the lotto. Yeah. So obviously he's been a skilled and very tactful individual in that sense. He knows what he's doing. But empathy is a very important thing for a leader to have. And I think when you look around at all at the moment, at the leaders of all the parties, empathy is not exactly beaming out of too many of them. In terms of a personality-driven election, this is a personality-light election. I don't think anybody is going to be persuaded to vote one way or the other for one particular party on the charisma of the party leader.
Right.
I would say, and I think a person who was consistently performed well in the last couple of years is Pearse Doherty in Sinn Féin. He has cut through a lot of bluster when it comes to the insurance issue. I think that's gone down with a lot of people
but
who
he
maybe
wasn't made leader.
No,
Mary Lou is the leader of Sinn Féin.
And likewise, when you think the leadership contest in Fine Gael, Simon Coveney actually got more votes from the members than Leo Varadkar did. But Leo Varadkar won the Electoral College, which we like to malign in the United States, but it got us our Taoiseach the way Fine Gael are set up.
People would say that Simon Coveney comes across very well. He has a more empathetic view than others, so he might be pushed out. We might see him being pushed out. You might see Simon Harris being pushed back, Owen Murphy being pushed back, as Johnny says, Mary Frances. If homelessness is bigger in different areas as well.
I don't know if it's as big in Waterford. I'm just interested in where we're at with Waterford, and you're talking about personality and empathy. Yeah. In Waterford, I think that's quite interesting now, looking at the candidates that are standing and who is going to step into that space in terms of the charisma. And I'm very interested in Matt Shanahan, and just back to what Kieran was saying about social media, I think it'll be very interesting to see how Matt Shanahan benefits from the use of social media, because he appeared to benefit very well from it in the local elections, and that will be quite interesting test of the influence of social media. And the other candidates as well are using social media in a big way.
Bernadette Phillips and all the others, yes.
And for the media, for ourselves, for the mainstream media, radio and print, it'll be interesting to see where people will take their lead from, and where they really make the effort to sift between the fake news and the real news.
We'll talk about the local stuff now.
Could I just say, sorry,
yes,
when we're talking about empathy, I wouldn't like it to when we're talking about empathy, we're talking about perception. You know, how the public perceives. I don't believe for a minute that Micheál Martin or Leo Varadkar are not, that they don't feel. I mean,
they're human, they're not robots.
They are. Micheál Martin himself has had a very hard time in family bereavements and things like that. So we're talking about perception. We're not talking about the actual type of people they are. We're talking about how they're perceived.
I'd agree with John. It's the way it comes across. And even, I mean, Leo Varadkar, he can be quite flippant sometimes in his responses. And I do feel that is something that can trip him up in terms of maybe one, innocuous remark or a phrase that in response to a question, because he can be quite on the defensive a lot of the time, and we've seen that already with the Fine Gael front bench. Even Simon Coveney was on prime time during the week, and he was quizzed about the elderly homeless woman, and her age was put at 81, and he corrected and said no, she was actually 61. I mean, does that make it more acceptable? Is a 61-year-old homeless woman more acceptable to an 81-year-old?
No, but he also was pointing out that, I think it was one of the Sinn Féin, was it Sinn Féin that made that point about him? Yeah, he was actually saying you don't have your facts right. So he was pointing out.
But again, it's the perception, though. He might have been within his rights to point it and to say no, actually it's factually correct.
There's two types. There was a guy on Liveline yesterday. I thought he was one of the workers who actually knew that poor man who was injured in the tent, and he made a very good point. There's two types of homelessness. There are certain people, and no matter what you do, they have a lot of problems. But then there's a huge swathe of people out there who want to buy their own apartment, they want to buy their own house, or they want to rent a house and they can't. And that really, really, if it's only one room. I mean, years ago in Dublin, when they did away with the bed sits, it was the biggest mistake they ever made. As long as you have, even if there's only one room, people need a front door they can go in and close it, and that's their little world, and that is achievable.
I want to play a little clip of the interview we did with John Halligan. We played, I think it was nearly a full hour of the interview yesterday. John Halligan, outgoing minister and independent TD, has decided he's not going to run, and we heard also yesterday that Brendan Halligan, his brother, is not going to run. So here's a tiny little clip. Slightly in jest, but an interesting clip, because again it just shows that if ministers are doing work in different fields, you may not necessarily lose sight of things, but you may not get reflected and may not get, because he did loads of work with skills and with all the space stuff.
Did it annoy you that you were going to a lot of events that weren't being reported on?
Oh yeah, it broke my heart at times, because all junior ministers said the same. We were just left behind. And I remember, for instance, do people realise, for instance, I know people are always talking about space again. We've 72 companies in Ireland working with the European Space Agency, a turnover of $500 million, winning contracts of top technological advance. Satellites after satellite have been launched out of Ireland with the Irish flag on them.
There's no votes in space.
No. But there's all these companies are delivering for Ireland.
There's no votes in space.
It's true. Donald Trump wants the Space Force. I don't hear anyone in this election saying we're going to the Space Force. In a few years'
time, we could have a local electoral area and be lads walking around on
Alpha Centauri,
going around, But the fact that John Halligan has decided not to go, I know it was kind of an open secret for maybe a week or so. We're talking about it, and again, the best of luck to him and his wife Elaine, and she's unwell at the minute, and we hope she gets better soon. It really does open the field, doesn't it? Yeah. Mary Francis.
Yes, hugely. It's very hard to call the fourth and even the third and fourth seats in Waterford now. You've got a huge transfers are going to come into play in a massive way. You've got Sinn Féin could benefit from John Halligan stepping aside.
Traditionally a lot of Halligan's votes would have gone to David Cullinan, and likewise. But then again, their votes that may go to somewhere else.
Yeah, and again, it is the hospital we keep on saying is it seems to be the major issue locally, cardiac care. But then again, within the constituency, is that as big west of Dungarvan, where many of the people probably look to Cork for their medical services?
Yeah. Yep.
So maybe we're becoming a bit too blinkered by that here in the city. But I would say there is a sizable vote for that issue, you would assume, with Matt Shanahan. I would also expect Bernadette Phillips to perform very strongly. I think she could be a dark horse. And again, the rural vote as well. We saw the farmers yesterday, Damien, in Dublin. There is an awful lot of annoyance at Fine Gael amongst the farming community. Fine Gael traditionally associated with being a party of maybe the big farmers. There is a lot of annoyance at how the environmental issues have been handled, at how farmers are kind of being made out to be scapegoats for the issues with climate change.
If you're a lifelong Fine Gael voter and a farmer, will you continue to vote Fine Gael if you're unhappy with it? I want to ask you that question now in a second. Now we're talking politics. We're with Johnny O'Connor, Mary Francis. We are with Kieran Foley, and we have Dermot here from the Munster. Damien, have
News
you
and Star.
News and Star. So used to saying
Out
it.
Tuesdays, folks.
So used to saying it.
Yep.
Damien, did you find out about John Halligan's pension? I haven't yet. I'm sorry. We will be doing that. We put in a request yesterday in terms of the full details. Haven't got it yet. Damien, don't forget Leo Varadkar was only made leader by Enda Kenny and not by the public in general. That's a big point. This is his first.
That's not correct. He was made leader by the membership of the Fine Gael party.
The membership, yes. But this is his first general election.
Yeah.
This is Leo's first time on the hustings out there really leading the party.
Yeah.
Like there's been local elections, been European elections.
And he's made a little bit of history this time. While we were talking earlier about whether he was forced to call the election early, even though he called the election early, he did it on his terms. Yes. He called it the 8th of February very early, and it's the first time since, I think it's 1918, that we have an election on a Saturday. So he again put his Leo Varadkar stamp on it.
Yeah, that's important. Texter, a phoner into 051-846-123. Can you ask the panel what they think of the over 65s not being allowed to retire? They have to sign on the dole. We're not going to get into topics in terms of issues just now because we want to go through some of the facts and figures. We're going to have approximately...
I will say one thing though about that. Mary Lou and Sinn Féin have said
they'll reduce it back to 65.
Will 65. I think that perhaps... the public will say, well, will they be in government? They might be, or they might not be. Yeah. But I think if Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael came out and promised that, they'd scoot in. Okay. There's a huge... And just say, one last thing as well, when we're talking about locally, John Halligan's, as I said, his absence now is good news. But there's an outside chance, depending on how the next couple of weeks play out and how the opinion polls go, there's an outside chance of one of the two bigger parties taking 2 seats.
There is, and that is a possibility. Yeah, there is. Again, we're not going to get a chance to mention everybody here. We are going to have debates and we get all the candidates in. We've got Fianna Fáil, we've got Fine Gael, you've got Labour, obviously, think they might have a chance. You've got the Greens feel they have a good chance. The left-wing parties feel that they will have some sort of influence in this election. You've got the Independents, you've got Renua, you've got different Aontús and everybody. So, and the candidates still hasn't, like Joe Kelly, just spoken to him there now, and he says that he'll decide over the weekend if he's going to run as an independent. There was some talk that Joe Conway might still run. So there's still a lot to play for in terms of declarations. Fiachra O'Kelleher of Onryan has sent in a note that we're looking at around 86,000 elected people in Waterford, people to vote. 54% of voters live in the Waterford city metropolitan areas. Some 16% are resident in Portlaw, Kilmac. So basically, the combined percentage of those from Dungarvan and Lismore is 30%. So 2/3 of voters are in East Waterford. That includes the city and Tramore, with over a third in West Waterford, including Dungarvan.
That was always in play, always. And that's why I said last week, when Austin Deise and Jackie Fahey, when they were at their height, they had big, they had big followings in the city, and they worked hard at the city in East Waterford. They weren't just seen as West Waterford politicians. And the same, the East, the city and the Tramore or Kilmac, wherever they are, they need. It's only 30%, but it's a lot. And if you look at past elections, 9 times out of 10 they'll vote for somebody who lives in that area as well.
At the minute, we're looking at 2 West Waterford candidates, John Pratt and Damien Gagan. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there could well be, obviously, geographical disparities in terms of percentage votes. We talked about the farmers earlier on. You might have some people will vote for people down the west because of just geography terms.
With the absence of John Halligan, depending on who comes in.
Yeah.
But
maybe nobody will come in.
Yeah, but I mean, John Pratt, Labour there's still a strong support for Labour in the city.
Yeah.
And it might stretch to Dungarvan and he'd get the look.
Tremor is a massive electoral area.
Yeah.
And of course, John Pratt's year as mayor will have helped his profile as well. Tremor, absolutely a massive electoral area. You have Marco Kohasik, they're expected to perform very well. Will the green wave extend from the urban areas to the rural areas? That really is the big question, because, I mean, across the country, the Greens are looking at targeting seats in predominantly urban areas. I can't see there being an overly favourable reaction to the Green Party canvassing, say, farmers or many of people in rural areas.
But is there enough there within the Tremor electoral in the city to...
Well, again, there could be,
It's very hard to know. The city is going to be very interesting for... I think Damien Kagan is probably quite relatively safe, possibly...
He won't want to hear that now. He won't want to hear that. Nobody wants to hear that.
I think the fact that you have an amalgamated council will obviously have helped Damien Kagan and John Pratt, because it means you're hearing voices from the west of the county on a more regular basis than probably any of us would have in the past. So I think that both of them could stand to benefit from that, and they might actually help each other. I don't think they'll help each other enough to both get elected, but yeah, I think Johnny's right. John Pratt will do quite well. Labour's vote has come back up. Obviously, they've got a better representation at council level now as well. Whether it's going to be enough to try and get them over the line is another thing altogether.
Sean Cummins and Eddie Mulligan,
back in the city,
business view in the city,
yeah. I think it's how they communicate on the issues, and I think people in the city, it'll come back down to the issues, especially on health and housing. We talk about homelessness, but like Johnny had said, it really is the people, renting and that kind of thing, that they're really going to be looking at who can deliver on those issues for them. And in the city, there's a lot of competition, so who communicates best on that is and
you have to look at the nuts and bolts of housing as well. And you take a couple trying to get on the ladder, said they don't. There's a big catch-22 there about qualifying for social housing and are not qualifying for it, and then not qualifying for mortgages. But you take a couple trying to get on the ladder and they're renting somewhere. I mean, the kind of life they're living, they haven't tuppence to spend between their rent and trying to save, and their quality of life is good. And I honestly believe that the homelessness thing, as it plays out, because I think people say, well, do you know what? I don't know how many ministers haven't managed to sort out health, but housing could be sorted out.
Yeah, and speaking of ministers, again, Matt Keane has texted in, any chance of a full senior minister? Like, if Fianna Fáil do manage to get 2 seats, they'll be saying, we will try and get a minister. If Fine Gael try to get 2, David Cullinane would be saying that if Sinn Féin are in power, he could well be a minister. Matt Shanahan or somebody else, independents, they'd all be saying it, that we could potentially be your minister.
And this is crucial for Waterford. This is really where Waterford needs to be at, because Waterford's only a 4-seater constituency.
Yes.
And on the big scale, just to put it in context, Cork has 18 TDs. Galway has 7 or 8, and Limerick has 7 or 8.
But even around us, Kilkenny 5, Wexford 5, Tipperary 6.
The South East combined is only barely 20 TDs. You know,
Cork,
as voters, we do need to be looking, like, while we're concerned with our own local issues, we do need to look at the bigger national picture. And I mean,
the regional
regional issue, but also if you look like other areas, just for example, Mayo, I was reading there recently about the success of Ireland West Airport in Knock, which is it's incredible when you look at what's been achieved there. And then you look at our situation at Waterford Airport, but look at the representation that Mayo had. They had Taoiseach and Kenny, they have Minister Michael Ring.
The Minister for Mayo, Mary Francis.
Well, we need somebody at the cabinet table. Is there somebody in the current list of candidates? And who is that person? And that's really where
I think our best chance of a minister withdrew 3 weeks ago.
Who's that?
Paddy Coffey. Realistically, if Fine Gael had been returned, I think the fact that the third candidate was put up is, in my own opinion, is what did for Paddy. He decided they didn't show enough faith in him.
Mary Butler would say if Fianna Fáil get 2 seats, if she's able to deliver herself and Eddie, there could be a minister there. We just don't know. It's wide open. I think we all agree it's wide open. John Deise not running. John Halligan not running, Paddy Coffey not running.
22,000 first preferences between those three candidates the last election. Thereabouts.
Wow. Listen, we've so much more to discuss. We're going to be, especially with Specsavers down in and Mulligan's down in Lisduggan next Friday. So hopefully we'll try and get you to have a little chat with us down there, if you can. Mary Frances, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Kieran, thank you very much.
Damien.
Johnny, thank you very much. Dermot, thank you very much.
Thanks, Damien.